Hello, boys and girls. It is time to meet some very fascinating insects on this planet. Yep. I might go outside and I might see some flies and ladybugs. I might see a butterfly. I might even see a mosquito. Ooh, but you know what? I think today we're also going to need to look at some other animals outside in our own backyard habitat. However, before we get started, let's talk about a little bit of what we talked about last week. We talked about life cycles, didn't we? So we're going to talk about, once again, the life stages or life cycles of an insect, how insects develop from birth to adult, and many insects undergo a complete change in the shape and appearance. We might call that a metamorphosis. That's a big word. Can you say that? Metamorphosis. Big one. Don't know if you could spell it. I don't know if I could either. But my friends, the name of this process that, let's see, one of our little caterpillars might take, all right, to change into a butterfly, right? It morphs into a butterfly. That's called metamorphosis, isn't it? So insects, like our painted lady butterfly, pass through 4 stages in their life cycle. Last week we talked about egg, larva, pupa, and adult, and each stage looks completely different. This starts off as an egg right here and ultimately ends up as an adult looking like that. And many of you shared your life cycle so far with me in your pictures, and I loved it. So let's talk about that life cycle real specifically toward our insects. The female insect is going to lay an egg. Okay, here's our butterfly. Here is our female, and here is the egg. So bee and an egg. We'll take our mosquito, right? And they're going to lay that in some water. Okay, so again, all of those insects, their eggs look very different, don't they? And you know what? With an insect, unlike our life cycle that we saw last week, and we looked for pictures that represented who we were, we started off looking kind of like our parents. We had 2 arms and 2 legs, and we have 2 eyes, and we have a nose and a mouth, and we might even have hair when we were a baby. That might be the same color of one of your people in your family, right? So the younger as an insect never resembles or looks like their parents. Look at this. Does this have any characteristics that our egg has with our butterfly? No, but they do pass on traits to their children. The painted lady loves thistle, and so oftentimes our female butterflies might lay their eggs on a place where their babies, when they come out of the egg and turn into the larva stage, will be able to find the same food that the parent likes. They lay their eggs in a spot where the baby will be able to survive, maybe because it can camouflage, right? Okay, if we're looking at this step, the pupa stage of our mosquito, right here, here's our larva stage of the mosquito. Very different as they go through a metamorphosis and change, right? But when we look at what they are able to do, blend in, camouflage, it's a way of survival, isn't it? And every single type of insect going through their stages is going to look exactly like that same insect every time. So every time a painted lady butterfly lays eggs, the eggs are going to look like this. Okay, we can identify it by its properties. Every time a bee lays its eggs and it goes through and its egg larva, the larva is always going to look like this. And so we have to understand that the female insect lays her eggs on a host plant. And when the eggs hatch, the larva that emerge looks like a worm, doesn't it? So different names are given to different insects in the worm stage, though. So for example, a butterfly, it's called larva, right? Fly larva is actually called a maggot. You might have heard that word before. And beetle larva is called a grub. And the larvae of butterflies and moths, as you just heard, are called caterpillars. Larvae feed and grow as quickly as they possibly can. They eat and eat and eat, and then you know what they do? They molt. They shed their hard exoskeleton, that hard stuff on the outside, many times as they grow, because you know what? The exoskeleton, they don't grow with them. In this way, insect larva grows larger each time they molt until they're ready to change into the adult. Yep. And so let's think about that larva having eaten. Oh, when you're a kid, sometimes you just get so hungry because maybe you're growing, right? Sometimes people call this stage a resting stage when it comes to larva. And that resting stage, that's our pupa stage. So let's take a look at some pupa. Here's some pupa of a bee. Here is the pupa of a mosquito. And here is the pupa of our painted lady butterfly. Some insects have that soft cocoon for the pupa stage, and some, like a butterfly, have a harder case. This is much harder on the outside right here than it would be on other insects. So let's think about that metamorphosis. If you have ever seen a butterfly emerge from a chrysalis, like we have in my classroom oftentimes, you know how extraordinary it is to watch that first flutter of their wings. And do you remember what I did with our butterfly larva and our butterfly pupa? They're over at the flower farm, and they are emerging left and right, and they're able to enjoy the rest of their life cycle as an adult over with a ton of flowers. Now I have to tell you something. Not all insects change completely. Some insects young, like a praying mantis, they're small models of their parents after hatching. They do change, so they do experience a metamorphosis. But because it's not a complete change, some scientists are going to call that an incomplete metamorphosis. And so we have to understand, like a praying mantis, the young starts off as a smaller version and will end up being just like its parent in the end. So today's assignment, just like a praying mantis, which is an insect, it goes through 3 life cycles. In this case, egg, nymph, adult. And just like I'm thinking of a dragonfly will do that incomplete metamorphosis as well. Today's assignment is for you to head outside, find an animal, squirrel, doesn't matter. Maybe you're driving down the road, just get a breath in a car, and maybe you see a cow. Snap a picture. Use maybe your parents' iPhone or somebody's iPhone or phone. Maybe you see a really cool picture in a book you're reading, or maybe you find one on the internet. I want you to think about that animal's life cycle. I wonder what it looked like when it was a baby and when it's an adult. So I want you to do a little research. I want you to see if you can find an animal's life cycle as a baby and maybe as an adult. And I want you to be able to share that with me or your teacher on, in my case, Flipgrid. However, maybe some of our friends out there might be using something else. But let's figure out what a life cycle looks like in terms of other animals like we did last week. I can't wait to see a different kind of animal's life cycle, not just yours. And then I also have a little game for you to play. If you haven't played our boom card game with insects yet, I want you to be able to try to figure out what you know about insects so far. See what you can remember. Okay? All right, my friends. Until next time. Bye.